this. I spend more time talking people off ledges and trying to get them to stay or to try this or to have this conversation or what about this or did you think about this? And there's this tug of war with teachers right now where they truly love kids. They truly love kids. But what I've communicated to a lot of principals and to a lot of instructional coaches is you're making them choose between their love for kids and their peace of mind. And we're at a time right now after this pandemic that we went through, but that they stand bold on choosing their peace of mind.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't think people see written on that elephant. There used to be a time when teachers would give so much of themselves. They're missing time with their own kids. They're putting more time in with other people's kids than their own. But now they're starting to sit back and think about all that I'm giving, all that I'm pouring, all that I'm giving. And like you said, it just seems like every time I turn around, I'm getting slapped in the face, or I'm not doing something good enough, or I'm not doing enough when I'm literally giving all that I have. It's Coach D here. I'm a post-secondary and workforce readiness coach, author, and speaker. And I'm empowering educators, inspiring students, and transforming schools one conversation at a time. Welcome to Coach D Wants to Know, the podcast where we dive deep into all things post-secondary success. Whether it's career readiness through college, trade schools, the military, apprenticeships, or entrepreneurships, we're talking about it. This podcast is for school leaders, counselors, business owners, parents, and students who want to explore every opportunity behind high school. Because when we know better, we guide better. So let's jump in and uncover the possibilities together because Coach D wants to know. It's Coach D here, empowering educators, inspiring students, and transforming schools one conversation at a time. Today, we have an incredible guest, a friend of mine, a dear friend and dear sister, Dr. Perrin, who is deeply committed to the transformation of power and the power of education. She currently serves as the district's mathematics coordinator in Spartanburg District 7, and she is passionate about equity in education. So, Dr. Perrin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Coach. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. And I'm so glad to have you on the show. We've known each other for years now. I follow your journey and everything you're doing in the professional development world, how you're growing. And I'm so excited to be able to share with the world all the great things that you do.
Oh, thank you. Okay. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. So let's get to know Dr. Edwina Perrin right now. And her website, it is www.leadershipmattersacademy.org. So please definitely check that out. All right, so we're going to talk about your background and the current work. So I have this question, and we're going to talk about your journey in education. What inspired you to pursue a career in education, and how has your journey evolved over the years?
Woo, good question. What inspired me was my second grade teacher. I still remember her name and the teacher assistant I had. They inspired me because they worked with us during that time. This was probably back in 1981, 82, when I was in second grade. And the fact that they worked with us one-on-one, I learned so much. Was always an excellent student, was always a perfectionist to make sure I did my homework correctly. But I would never forget the moment that when we started writing in cursive, and she was like, "That's not right. You didn't do it right. You got to do it over." And I was like, "But I always get stuff right." That was my first time ever hearing somebody say I didn't get something right. And so the fact that her and the teacher assistant took their time to work with me and to help me evolve, I was like, "Oh, I want to be a teacher." So at that time, I was the only child. I would come home and play with the dolls, sit them up in the classroom and do all that. Or I would ask my cousins and all my friends, "Hey, come over," and we'll be outside and I'll be the school teacher and would be teaching. So I love to teach. And my granddaddy, he had a PhD in life, but a sixth grade education. And that was something that he always wanted us to do. He could read somewhat, sixth, seventh grade. He could read somewhat, and he could sign his name. And so I wanted to make sure I was able to help him, and we would help him learn how to read. And so that really helped me once I really started learn how to write and learn how to read fluently. Then we would help him read the comics and help him read different things. So that became my inspiration.
That's wonderful.
And so as time progressed, I went to USC Aiken for my undergrad. For all of my graduate work, I was at it was Converse College when I got my master's. Got my master's plus 30 from Converse. It was Converse College, and then when I got my doctorate, it was Converse University. So that's where I got my doctorate. I was in the classroom between 1997 and 2015. And then from 2015, I worked in the district office in Spartanburg District 5. I was a district elementary math coach. Now I work in Spartanburg District 7 as the district mathematics coordinator. I am pre-K through 12th grade. And I do have coaches that work on the team with me. So that is great.
That is a great journey. So you've seen every area along the way. That is awesome. That is great. So in your current role, you just spoke about that as a district mathematics coordinator. How do you see your work impacting students, teachers, and the overall education system in that area?
Oh, thank you. I love the word impact because I always want to be an impact to make a lasting impact on the children. But one of my things is I want to make sure that all children learn, and I want to make sure all teachers are equipped to teach all children. One of my passions is to make sure that every child is given a fair chance to learn. No matter if they need extra support, no matter if they need other resources. So it's a passion of mine to make sure that take place. When I'm working with teachers, I always tell teachers, listen, we grow together. There's nothing wrong with reflecting and refining oneself. And I often tell them, I say, listen, I have to reflect and refine every day. They was like, but you have a doctorate. And I was like, that doesn't mean anything. I don't know everything. Right. I said, we're growing together, learning together. So with that being said, I always want to make sure everybody have everything they need in the math content world. I also like to be a liaison for teachers, for students to teachers, teachers to our leaders, especially right now in the state of South Carolina. We are shifting standards. So it is time for us to receive new standards. We're a little behind because of COVID. But with that being said, our state is making a huge shift from the traditional algebraic thinking with the standards to geometry with statistics from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade in any of the math courses that they are taking. So making sure our leaders understand what's going on, as well as making sure our leaders are up to date, because many of our leaders, they have been in it for like 43 years, 44 years. This is a shift from them that Algebra 1 will not be our first Carnegie unit in math. So there's a shift for them, and making sure I coach them and making sure I surround myself with other South Carolina leaders to make sure they're coaching me, because sometimes I'm like, ooh, I don't know about this standard. Can you help me? In having that support group to surround me with that. So I'm excited about how I impact others to ask questions. And I also like to make them comfortable where teachers, students, today I taught in a class for a teacher who's working on her master's. So I went in there and taught some 10th and 11th graders Algebra 1. So that keeps me connected and grounded.
Right. And I think I like really what you said when you make sure they understand that we are all growing together every single day. So even when I do any of my coaching and my professional development, when I was master teacher leader and I'm working with all CTAE teachers, we are in this together. Again, like you said, new standards coming down. we've got to learn just like you've got to learn. And we're going to do everything we can to make the transition for you as seamless as possible. Because even though the curriculum is changing, the standard is changing, those kids are still expecting you to show up and know exactly what you need to do and offer that. And I think you being able to show them is very similar to what I used to do with my kids. We're learning together in the classroom too at sometimes. I'm going to learn from you. You're going to learn from me. We're going to grow in this together. And I like your refining, the refining. That for me, I think is really key and clutch, because I reflect a lot, and I journal, I write down, because I want to grow every single day. And I think in our profession, with working with teachers like we do, they have to know that you don't know it all. You're not going to be an A on point teacher every single day. We can't expect that from our students. We can't expect that from our teachers. We can't expect it from our leaders. Everybody's not going to have an on point day every day.
Exactly.
Being able to understand that, even with me and my coaching, what's going on right now with the changes in CTAE and college readiness and everything that's going on right now, I have to do that same thing to kind of sort of break through the old mindset, what CTAE used to be. And I will forever say, we were treated for so long as the redhead stepchildren of the building. But now we're being brought more into the forefront and driving a lot of the mindsets about, we need to make sure they pick a career before they pick a path. So yeah, I'm having to do that same work to really guide people, take them slow through this, because the whole college and career readiness has to shift to career readiness, and just simply career readiness, because there's so many paths to get to those careers. So yeah, we are both in that same boat, having to restructure mindsets and hearts for some people that have been in a long time, and everybody is having to change right now. Everybody is having to change.
Yeah. So.
All right. So you did mention when I asked you to do the questionnaire, you mentioned equity as a key challenge right now. Can you share some of the biggest equity gaps you see in education today, and what steps schools can take to address those equity issues?
So a lot of the equity issues that I see going on, I don't even think some people, first of all, I think some people get equality and equity mixed up.
Mm.
So that's the first thing, is making sure they understand the difference. The equity comes in that in the math world that I'm having to make sure is that every child has an opportunity to use manipulatives when they're starting to work on certain parts of their math. Some of our teachers like to say, well, they don't need them. Well, that's not for you to say. When you're teaching something new, you need to allow them to have access to them. Or either you say, I have teachers say, well, I only give them to my kids with IEPs. That's not, I mean, every child needs to be able to touch manipulatives in that manner. I also having the issue of equity of having to shift some of our teachers' mind, because the area that I work in is near the BMW plant manufacturing. And so we get a lot of students from other countries, Germany. We have an influx of Ukrainian students coming in. And so making sure that those teachers provide the same equity and the opportunities for those students to learn, if they have to give them extra support, or if we have to ask other, I guess, support people within the building, like how can I get some support with them, and making sure that those children that have ML, because in South Carolina we say ML, multilingual learners, making sure those students have an opportunity in the same opportunities that other children normally have. And just because they come from another country and speak another language doesn't mean you put them to the side.
Right.
Also, with the equity part with math, having to constantly remind teachers, encourage the young ladies to learn how to code. Coding is not a male thing. I'm constantly coaching teachers. You cannot say, well, the girls don't want to do that. No, let's encourage them about that, because they'll say they don't want to do it, so I don't make them. That's not equity. for you to sit there and not expose them to it. Explain it to them. Bring in a guest speaker with them, and work with them. And also our children with disabilities, having to constantly coach the math teachers on, listen, yes, they may have a 504, yes, they may have this, but they still deserve the same opportunities as the other children in there. So just dismantling some of the biases that we have in math, and having to coach some of the teachers. Equity is not the sole part of race and ethnicity.
Right.
It's about making sure every child, every gender has exposure to the same learning within that classroom. And one of those things that really I'm working on with our director of secondary is making sure our females, are invited to the coding, the cybersecurity classes, and all that, because we've had a couple of teachers that like, well, I don't give the application to the girls for the summer camp because they're not going to go to that. That's not right. That's not for you to decide. That's for parents to decide. So making sure that we continue to nurture our teachers and to help them grow, that cybersecurity is not a man's world. It is everybody's world.
Right. So I'm actually in process now of trying to find an organization in Columbus, Georgia, because that's where my granddaughters are. So I have 3 granddaughters down there, and I really want them to get into that, because I know in the area where I'm at in Atlanta, Girls Who Code is really, really big here. It's a huge organization, and so it's been in almost every school that I've been in. So I'm actually trying to find that for them, because they expose those young ladies to that world of coding and cybersecurity, just like you say. And it's amazing how their minds and their brains work, and they are so good at it. They just need to be exposed to it. And most people don't know that I actually started my teaching career in South Carolina. So I'll always give honor to Dr. William Roach, who was my very first principal. But a lot of what you're talking about, that was what he stood on in that building. I started my teaching at Berea High in Greenville. And I remember he was very, very adamant about everybody knowing where these kids came from before you tried to teach them. And then making sure that, again, you met them where they were, and then you led them to where you wanted them to be. Everybody had opportunities, many opportunities. Some of the brightest kids just needed someone to make sure they had opportunities just like everybody else. So he was very instrumental in making sure we knew their neighborhoods, where they were coming from, helping us not make any kind of assumptions just because of what seemed on the outside appearance as well. So that was a really, really good experience for me, for it being my very first teaching, coming out of corporate, coming from the college scene. I had an amazing first principal, and I am so grateful. And I text him, and he knows that I text him, and I give him his honors all the time. I give him his flowers, because I had an amazing first principal. And again, like even the program, because I was with the PACE program, and I can't remember what it was, and you may know this area because you're there, but they showed us a video, and it was a part of South Carolina, and they wanted us to see some of the background of the kids and how they overcame. But like the building didn't have like doors or windows, or something was going on, but they showed us that to make us understand that these kids are going through so much just to get to the building or just to learn, and how we as teachers have to go above and beyond, the superficial or what seems to be on the surface, and dig deep so that we can pull out that inner genius out of them, because all kids can learn.
Right. So and I know you was in Berea High, and my first teaching job up here in Greenville was at Lakeview Middle School. So Lakeview students, they fed into Berea High. So I know all too well about, I made sure those kids were exposed to everything. I'm like, they needed to know, I could do this. And they needed to know this is how much math is in sports and stuff, because you're right. Many of them come from communities that education was not an importance because at that time they had the mills. But then when the mills started closing around that area where we worked at, parents didn't know what to do.
Right.
And so we started like exposing children like, hey, even if you want to play basketball in college or NBA, you still need the math. You need to know how to count your money. You need to know how to be an accountant. You need to know how to keep up with your stats so they can make sure they recognize you correctly. So even just small things, just exposing them to different things.
Right. It makes a huge difference, So so that's your background. That's the current work that you do. We're going to take a little transition and we're going to move into the key challenges in education right now. So we have talked about equity in education, but now we're going to go to that one that to me, and I don't understand this part, but to me, it's like there's a huge elephant in this room, in every building, in every district, but it seems like the people in charge sometimes don't see this elephant. And for me, the elephant is stomping. It's just not standing over there in the corner. It's literally stomping. And that's the teacher shortage and what's going on. So we all know that the teacher shortage is a growing crisis. From your perspective, what are the biggest factors you feel that are driving that issue right now?
One of the key factors is that a lot of the things about education that are posted or shared in social on the news is negative. It's not, we're not celebrating the positive aspects of teachers like we used to. At one point, the profession was valued in the community. And so now, because we see so much negativity and it's more positivity than negativity, we see so much of it on the news, it's just put a sour taste in many of our teachers or many of our students that are going to college. I think that's one of them. Second thing I think is also the pay. This generation that's come behind you and I, they're looking like, wait, y'all are the teachers. Y'all are preparing the NBA players, the NFL players, the major league players, the rap stars. You taught them English and all that, and they making this and y'all making that. Make it make sense. Right. I think that's the second part to it. Another factor that I think is the this is a very tender subject, the lack of parental support. When we're trying to help students, and now students have more control in their household than the parents have. Yes. And I think because our hands are so tied now, you can't say anything, or they have an anxiety, or you looked at them, and it's just like we're in a very sensitive culture right now. And it's like, and so people are like, I'm not gonna go do that. In the area that when my dissertation was actually on the impact of novice teacher efficacy and the impact of induction and mentoring. And a lot of it was the fact that they didn't feel supported when they did, because my definition for novice for my dissertation was 0 to 5 years. And many of them in my quantitative studies said they didn't feel supported by admin, or they didn't feel supported by the parents. I still can see the figures. It was like 66% was like they don't feel supported. And then when I broke it down, it was 40% didn't feel like they were supported by administrators, and 26% said they didn't feel supported by the parents. And so one of my questions was a kind of an open-ended. It was you could answer it, but I wanted to dig deeper. So in their multiple choice, many of them, because it was a select all, they select all as in, why should I come to work? You have to be to work at 7 o'clock, have to do here. I come home, grade all these papers, do all this stuff. I have a discipline issue. I call home, I get cursed out. I'm not getting paid enough. I go tell the leader that I'm getting cursed out, and he's like, oh, suck it up. And I'm just, I don't want to do this anymore. So I think that's a lot of the, those are probably the three main factors that I could speak on that are really, really impacting it's just the retention rate Um, there's a university that's in Greenville. I will not call that university's name because I don't have permission. However, I was in a meeting and they said last year must have been 23, 24. They only graduated 4 people in the education department.
And we have a number of universities in Georgia who are deciding not to continue their education department.
Yeah.
So
my alma mater, Converse University, Converse College, when it was the all-girls school, it used to be one of the number one education school of education. And God, for years. And now it had to go to co-ed just to sustain attendance rate because people stopped majoring in education. They were known for their music education. They were known for their art education. They can't even recruit in those areas now.
Yeah, you spoke because I have the book, The Burnout Teacher, 7 Steps to Relight Her Fire, and you hit, it's got the iceberg on top. Her why is the tip of the iceberg, but again, we're failing to remember what's up under there. And you hit everyone. First, it said low pay, long hours, heavy workload, the paperwork, irrelevant professional development, unrealistic expectations, class disruptions, lack of support, lack of resources, and those additional duties. All that is up under the iceberg. It seems like for me, because both of us, we're really passionate about this, I spend more time talking people off ledges and trying to get them to stay or to try this or to have this conversation or what about this or did you think about this? And there's this tug of war with teachers right now where they truly love kids. They truly love kids. But what I've communicated to a lot of principals and to a lot of instructional coaches is you're making them choose between their love for kids and their peace of mind. And we're at a time right now after this pandemic that we went through, but that they stand bold on choosing their peace of mind.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't think people see written on that elephant. There used to be a time when teachers would give so much of themselves. They're missing time with their own kids. They're putting more time in with other people's kids than their own. But now they're starting to sit back and think about all that I'm giving, all that I'm pouring, all that I'm giving. And like you said, it just seems like every time I turn around, I'm getting slapped in the face, or I'm not doing something good enough, or I'm not doing enough when I'm literally giving all that I have. And it's you have to understand that we are in a crisis when they don't even care if it's October. I told somebody, I was like, I've never seen this amount of teachers that will just walk out. And I was on an advisory, HR advisory committee. And I told them, it was like every time they turn around, it's give the teachers grace, or we got to take care of our teachers just like we're taking care of. But as soon as that meeting was over, here comes an email or here comes something that we got to give them 10 more things to do. So it didn't match at all. And I remember saying consistently and over and over and over again, I was like, you all do realize that these teachers will quit and go to Amazon. You do realize that they're in a mindset right now where they are evaluating in their households, can we make it without that income? What can we cut out? We learned how to do without a lot during COVID. So when they felt like they could do without a lot, there were some decisions that are being made. We're I don't know about South Carolina, but I know we're floating our elementary schools with first year teachers in elementary with no para, 28 kids. That's a hard situation for anybody. It's hard with a para. And you're a first year teacher coming into that. I have a bonus son, 2 years in a row. He had first year teachers with no para. And that was first grade and second grade. 28 kids for a first year teacher in first and second grade.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. So when we're looking at it, and I'm just looking at my little board that's up there, and it's been there, it's back to the basics. There was a time when we understood that we needed to do X, Y, and Z. And that we did those well. We did them well. And we built a solid foundation. It seems like with the more changes and the, you got to keep up with this and you got to run to that. And here's something new. This is a new initiative and we got to do this now. We're skipping a lot of the foundation. We're skipping those basics and we're just wanting them to be advanced in so much. But in order to be advanced, we need to have a good foundation to grow on. So, I think a lot of the teachers are feeling that way too, that they are pushed to get the data to say a certain thing, but they're not given the opportunity to build a solid foundation so that the data is true and it actually means something. And we're not just going through things, checking off boxes.
Amen.
So, yeah, that's what they've been sharing with me. And like you said, you become that liaison, you become that middleman to try to take what they're saying and you try to take it back to leadership, to make sure that we're understanding that we all ultimately want the same thing. We really do. I just feel like there's some people making the decisions who, like we both said, have not been in the classroom in a very, very long time. Mindsets are shifting. These children are different. These children are real different. These children are really, really different. And I don't know if they understand the struggle that the teachers are having to try to keep up with the rush to get to a certain standard being done by this certain time in the year, as opposed to, again, just slowing down and learning how to go slow to go fast.
Right. And to add to that, a lot of it is too, like, COVID didn't cause this. COVID exposed a lot of stuff. So I'm having to tell, like, I had to tell a coach today, I was like, no work today. I was like, we stayed late yesterday, and which was yesterday at her school. And I said, and then on Friday, when the students are out, we got all day math PD because the standards are changing. So I said, today, go home, shut it down. Just coaching my coaches on the shut it down and coaching the coaches to coach your teachers. Okay, pick a day you're going to stay after school and work. Get your stuff done, but you know what? It's okay to go home. If it did, the thing that I'm wrestling with some teachers just want to go home every day now, and we're having to say no. One day you ought to be able to stay an extra 30 minutes or an extra 40 minutes, get your work done, and go forward.
Right.
But, take care of yourself. Yesterday I held a PD. And this is a challenge. This is a challenge in education, and because this is the only area that I work in for my 8 hours. Yesterday I was doing a PD at a school. I had them to go in courtesy mode, and the teacher said, "Courtesy mode." I said, "Yep." I said, "You won't need your MacBooks because we're Apple district." I said, "Close your MacBooks. You don't need it." And I said, "I would greatly appreciate if you take your cell phone, put it on vibrate, and turn it face down and not pick it up until we were finished." At first, you can feel the energy. Like I said, I promise you, if you stay in tune with me, we can get finished quicker, go through every piece of information we need to get through and go through it. But if you would put your devices away, this would help. Before they left, as I was wrapping up, one of them said, "Dr. P," I said, "Yes. You know what? I was mad at you because you told us to go in courtesy mode, but I actually paid attention because I was not on my device." And then the other one said, "You know what? I rolled my eyes and smacked my lips when you turned around, but you know what? I realized that I need to turn my phone off or sometimes put it to the side because I would have missed this great PD." And I said, "Guess what? I didn't make the PD great. I said your engagement and your interaction and you asking questions and pushing me to answer your question, you made the PD great." And they kind of look like, what? And so I'm learning to say courtesy mode with devices. And it is working. And some of them realize they are addicted to their phone. But I also have to tell in my leader, when the principals come to a training, because we are shifting with the standards and the principals are coming, I have to tell the principals, courtesy mode.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them get mad, and then I'll just say, okay, stop. Why are you getting upset? Because if your teacher did this in a faculty meeting while you were up, you would have an issue. So let's practice and let's give out what we want to come back to us. I said, because if you so in this session with me that you're going to be on your device and you're going to be on your phone, you cannot be a hypocrite and think your teachers are not going to sew that back to you.
Exactly. And I think we continuously point the finger at everybody else except, and we don't realize that we all have helped get to where we are. We all have a part in this, and we all have to own it, and we all have to shift, because you can't require the students not to be on their phones if you were the teacher, but if you're sitting in your faculty meeting on your phone. And again, like those school leaders, you can't require your teachers or your students to pay attention and not be on their phones if they're district leaders. When I did get to the school leader role, and I was so excited, I can remember being in the PD sessions, the all-day PD sessions with the principals, and I'm new and I'm excited and I want to be there. And then they have whatever the question prompt, and everybody at your table, you're going to turn to the, your leaders at your table, and y'all going to discuss this. So I'm ready, I'm reading what it is, and I'm ready to turn. And the seasoned ones there, they could care less about what that question was up there on the board. They just trying to figure out how much longer you going to be in, or what you got going on, or how's your daughter doing. And I'm sitting there like,
or where you got your nails done at, where you got your nails done. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I thought, I'm supposed to, we supposed to be turning to our elbow partner. We're supposed to be doing what we're supposed to be doing. So again, it's from the top down. We all have to take ownership. We all have to take ownership of our actions. And I do, agree wholeheartedly about what you're saying, wholeheartedly, because we all are addicted at sometimes, and it's nothing to be able to turn that phone off and put it away. I actually, again, like you said, half the time I can't find my phone in my room, and my kids have to tell me where it's at, because I've turned it off, and I am loving the fact that I'm detaching from it as well. So, and I tell my kids all the time, number one, I'm a real estate agent. If anybody wants to be on their phone during the daytime, I want to be on my phone during the daytime. I'm putting it to the side. So you all can do that same thing, because I can guarantee you only about one or two of y'all in here really trading stocks right now. And everybody else, y'all just doing mindless activities, and it's not bringing you any money. I know my two kids out of mine that I teach. I know the ones who are out there in Bitcoin, and right now they about sick as they can be. I mean, they'll Coach D, I dropped $1,000. I mean, and they'll tell me and they'll show me. So I only got two that really in here, really want to be on these phones. And I think that's a shift too, just even thinking about that, because of the way we're shifting in the world. There are some kids making money on their phones.
Right.
And again, so when we're talking about shifting mindsets, I think we've got to bring more people to the table that are in this generation who know how to move around. Because I know one of the things that I'm going to suggest, because we do have, and I like what you said earlier, all the negativity is what makes it to the news. So one of the things I'm going to propose to my principal is that we select a good team of 5 to be the content creators, to tell the story, the real about what's going on in the building. Because some of the stuff that's made it out to the news about my building is very old, but it's just recirculating because somebody saw it or whatever, and they reposting it. And that's not what's going on in our building. We have amazing things with our kids. They are some of the brightest, and they're doing some of the greatest stuff, but that never seems to make it out. So I'm going to pitch to her, and I'm going to write a proposal on it for about 5, especially if they're in that audio video technology and film pathway. You all start recording. You all start recording the good stuff. You all work under the direction of our principal. Go over there, go in your building. That's your class project, and start creating the content that tells our true story about what's going on in our schools. So, because right now at this point, we've got to flood for every one negative thing out there. We probably need 50 positives just to get rid of the one negative. So, we can start creating, we can start letting them use their talents and what they're good at to get the information out.
The information out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we've got to start telling the story. Oh, and I think that, oh, wow. that leads right into the next question I have. Perception of the profession. You've touched on this a little bit before. You mentioned that education is not taken seriously anymore. When exactly do you think that shift happened? Because, like you said, this is not something that happened during COVID. We just got a lot more exposure because, before COVID, people did have little, you'd hear it, y'all just babysitting, y'all don't do anything, y'all shouldn't get that much pay, y'all off all summer, whatever, you off on weekends. And then when COVID came and they had to have the babies at home, we became the best. I mean, I think we were really next to Jesus. I think we were seated next to Jesus. And then I don't know what happened because we went back into schools and all it went, it became worse than it was, the perception beforehand. So, how can we work to restore proper respect to this profession?
Well, it starts with us as educators. Today in a MTSS meeting in South Carolina, we don't no longer call it RTI. It's called MTSS, multi-tiered support system is that's what our MTSS stands for. And so we were in that meeting and I said, y'all, it's the teachers. I say, we have to, it's the educators. I'm not going to just say teachers. It's all the educators. We get on social media and we'll say, I don't have any school supplies. I don't have this. Then that get passed around, not knowing that, yes, they do. It's just not what they want to use. Mm-hmm. So today we use a particular platform. It is iReady through Curriculum Associates. Mm-hmm. And with the platform, it's a plethora of resources in there. Mm-hmm. But we've been having some of our educators have been going to board members, have been going on social media saying they don't have access to materials. So today, when the MTSS coordinators were in the meeting, they was like, wait, they can do what? They have this? They don't have to go to other sites? And I said, and a couple of your teachers have been on social media saying they're having to pay for subscriptions to certain digital platforms out of their pocket, and they don't have to. So that was kind of like a shift with that. We sometimes are our own worst enemies. With what we post, what we share, what we get on about. And so I say all that to say it started shifting the more the social media platform grew. I can say in my area, the 2 Spartanburg districts that I worked in, they started posting, we don't have paper. We gotta bring out our own paper, which they didn't tell the whole truth that, in South Carolina, they were getting a check. They get a check every year to get X amount of dollars to buy things. You just didn't want to use your check for that. And so we have become our own worst enemies in some cases. I also, we've become our own worst enemies of even talking about we don't make enough money, because I had to break this down to a novice teacher about 3 or 4 years ago, because I was a district mentee. She was like, I don't make any money, da 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 da. I said, well, let's talk about this. I said, I'm going to coach you on something. I said, how many days do you work? She said, 190. I said, so I don't want to know your salary, but take your salary and do that. I said, you're off on the weekends. Is that a pro or con? She said, that's a pro. I said, you off during the holidays? Yes. I said, you work 190 days? Yes. What time can you get off? Well, I can leave at 3:15, but if I stay to work, I can choose what time I stay. Okay. And then I started talking about all that. I said, now let's go over here. We got all these industries around them. Yes, when they leave, they don't have to take papers home. But guess what? Some of them are working 12-hour shifts. Some of them are going in at 3 and getting off at 3 the next morning. Some of them are going in at 7, getting off at 7, and they're having to work on their weekends. So I said, I understand what you're saying about a dollar amount. I do get that. You're right. But I said, also, let's not get on the social media platforms and say this, because then we'll become our own worst enemies. And she was like, I never thought of it that way. I said, y'all are so quick to go to a social media platform and post about, I don't make any money, I don't do this, da 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 da. And I said, but you have to remember some of the pros. So I said, when you hear some of your other friends, tell them to start writing down the pros and the cons. I said, could we be making more? Yes, we should. I said, but I also want you to know, you are at home on the weekends.
Yeah.
Those people have to work on the weekends. And so that kind of helped that. Now, I wish I could spread that around with more for them to truly understand that.
And I think, that raises a good point. So there's a lot going on in Congress and everything about, and I think the complaint has been heard. I do not think, that they're just sitting around not doing anything about increasing the pay. I do think that's coming down the line for a lot of states. But also I think what you shared as well, the good about the profession is not out there. Yes, we deserve our summers. Yes, we deserve more pay. Yes. But I think also some of the things that we choose to do also contribute to a lot of the frustration and the loss. So I've been very intentional, since I'm back in the building and I'm not in the leadership role, and I'm in a great role. I love my role. But yet I still have some responsibilities. I'm very intentional about what I do to make my day go smooth. So I'm very intentional about that planning ahead, that planning period that I do have, taking that time to plan out for the next day, before the next day, and not trying to do it that morning, the afternoon, during, whatever. So I've gotten really, really intentional about my planning and doing that prior to. So that when I do, on those days, like you said, on those days when I don't want to take home anything, I don't have to take home anything. So there are ways to make it work. And I truly love what I do. I love being with the kids every day. And again, my weekends, when I shut it down on Friday, I shut it down on Friday. I've done everything that I can do. And I'll make sure that I'm ready for Monday, whether that for me, 6:00 on Sunday, if I want to sit down and do some planning, I'm planning out for the whole week. So I've been very intentional about making sure I have peace and I have my time and I'm able to do my self-care. So again, all of those things I think we do have to teach our novice teachers, because sometimes they are in silos, especially, and I always say, especially for the CTA teachers, because sometimes they're the only person in that building that teaches that. Right. So they might not have the support or to be able to share the lesson plans. But again, that comes from our leaders. That comes from our mentorship programs. I've had to survey and audit a lot of new teacher mentorship programs. And a lot of times those programs are just checking off a box. Yeah, you got something on paper saying it, but it's not a true new teacher mentorship program to help them. Like coming in, sometimes you don't even know how to use the copier. You don't even know where, the true teacher lounge, the one where they're not going to go in there and just be the negative people in there. That's the one you don't need to go hang in. So again, just really making sure we're wrapping our arms around them and telling them it's okay to shut the computer. Just like you said, it's okay. Today, we're not going to do it. It can't be like that every day, but at least 2 days out of your week, if not more, you need to be able to be time conscientious to be able to get what you need to get done so you can go home.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add to that. I have had to coach some of the teachers. I was like, you had a 45-minute planning. What did you do? Well, I started scrolling on social media. I said, listen, let me tell you something. I said, I have 2 nights that I really would just get on social media and scroll and look. And I said, when I look up, I said, my time limit is from 7 to 8:15. I said, I have a timer. I'm getting off. I said, and then when I look, I'll be like, golly, that much time went by and I've been scrolling. I said, so you've lost your entire planning period scrolling, because instead of you putting that phone in your drawer and saying, let's do this. I said, for you all, it's being on the phone. I said, for me in my day, it was stopping the busybodies that was always want to talk during planning. I said, I had to put up a sign and say, I am planning, no visitors.
Right. I cut off the light today in my classroom and hid in the corner. I had to get on a Zoom call with some people and my principal was on there. She was like, where are you? I said, I'm hiding. So yeah, so and somebody else was on that call, and it was like when they want to leave and they know they're getting ready at 3:30. There's a certain group. If you see them, you know you're not gonna get past them because it won't be a quick 5-minute conversation. It's gonna be 30 minutes, 40 minutes, or whatever. So she said she might as well stay in there and just finish her emails and then wait till they move out, then go because it was gonna be the same time anyway.
Right. Yeah. So yeah.
So I think that's good. So all right, we talked about some key challenges. We talked about some things that we can do to help those out. Now we're going to transfer into, we're going to transition to the future of post-secondary success. So, that's one of my babies. That's something that I'm very vocal about. So we got changing pathways coming now. And you believe post-secondary success will no longer be primarily tied to bachelor's degrees. I definitely understand that. And at a point where I have to talk to some people about with the online programs, there's a challenge to whether or not there's even any validity to some of these degrees, because who really did the work? So there's a lot of discussion that's going on with that. So can you expand on how associate degrees and certificates are becoming more valuable in today's job market?
Well, I can even talk about that from my brother's perspective. My brother has an associate degree from Piedmont Technical College in Greenwood, South Carolina. Now, could my brother have gone to Clemson? Yeah, my brother's very intelligent, but he had to find himself. He went to Piedmont Tech, is what we call it, earn an associate's degree and make just as much as I do with my doctorate. So, with that being said, I do see eventually a lot more jobs, or you're just gonna need a certificate, or you may need just an associate's degree. Which, let's go back when my parents were in high school and in college. It was called back in the day vocational school. Vocational school was pushed because guess what? We need the mechanics, we need the hairstylists, we need the plumbers, we need the electricians, we need the HVAC people, we need those people, we need the cybersecurity, we need all of that. So I'm not opposed to that. Now, here's the thing that we have to just make sure that people understand is that we are pushing all these kids in AP classes. And again, you're in Georgia, I'm in South Carolina. In South Carolina, we tend to push these AP classes. Well, some of these parents are getting their feelings hurt when their children going to college because they chose to be an AP, even though they scored the score on their AP exam. They're getting to the colleges and it's like, we're just going to take them as electives. Yep. So those children have sacrificed their high school career. They have probably, I'm going to be honest, because I like to be real raw and relevant, they probably have even suffered through anxiety trying to make 4s and 5s on the AP, thinking that or thinking that they're going to enroll in college an advanced year when they're only taking them as electives. Yep. I can speak for this from my son. My son graduated from a high school in Greenville County. My son had very good grades, excellent grades. Went on to Winthrop University, and my son had 3 AP classes. So that was 3 times 3. That was 9 hours. They only took 3 hours for the AP credit. The other 6 hours were electives. Yep. He was crushed.
In my role, and I have all the college advisors come in, and I can tell you from jump, Georgia Tech will tell us and all of our kids, yes, it'll be an elective, because we need to make sure as you advance and matriculate through these courses that you got the foundation that we needed you to have so that you can move through the way we need you to move.
And I can speak to that because my coworker that works with me, son, graduated from the district that I work in. And she said that her son sacrificed his high school years, sacrificed being with his friends, did all of this only to arrive to Georgia Tech. And I think it might have been 8 years ago, because so he graduated 8 years ago from college. But when he arrived, so he graduated, so it's been like 12 years before he actually was in college. And she said only for them to tell him, I'm sorry, we do not accept your courses. your AP courses. You're going to have to take all these over. He was crushed.
Yeah, they will tell you that. They tell us that when I bring them in, they do their meetings where they come out and just introduce their program, what they have, and get kids excited about going. They'll let you know. I mean, it looks good to get in, and they want you to have it to get in. It proves that you can do college level work, but you're going to do it over.
So, you're going to do it over. And many of our universities are even getting to that point. So with the post-secondary, I am a fan of pushing. I believe in dual enrollment. That's just me. I believe in dual enrollment and let them work on it. I have a cousin. She's the same age my son. Well, she's a year older than my son. She owns her own salon. Now, does she have to do the upkeep and all that stuff? But she does well. College just wasn't for her. It wasn't. Her mom knew that. Her mom said, I am not spending all of this money and you just playing around. So she said, you got to come out. She was like, what do you want to do? She's like, well, I always wanted to do hair. She's like, well, guess what? You will enroll. I will help you pay to go to cosmetology school. I will help get you through, but I will not sit here and pay a $20,000 a year tuition and you just chilling. Yeah. And so it has worked out for her. But I am a fan of dual enrollment. I am a fan of students. Like I say, we need mechanics. We need HVAC people. We need electricians. We need landscapers. Like the landscapers to do landscaping. I mean, we need all of those things. So I'm not opposed to that. My brother has a industrial, I think it's an industrial engineer. He does really well. He works at Michelin. Really well.
Yep. And I think we have to, again, just like we talked about with teachers, just like we talked about with the profession and the perception, that's another perception that we have to shift. It does not need to be AP, gifted, honors, or CTAE. All of those can go hand in hand. You need to have it in all. And with the way the world is going right now with AI and technology, those kids are going to need to go some of those tracks for those high demand careers. But whatever state they choose to live in, they number one need to look at the job outlook. So before you decide to go in any college and you're deciding whatever your major is going to be, what is the job outlook looking like in the next 4 to 10 years? If that's one of those careers that you don't see, that lets you know this is not where I need to be going right now and spending 4 years of my life and all of that tuition there. You need to first look at the job outlook and how is this world shifting to make a good decision on which path you need to go. You have college and career academies in all states, all over. Some of those kids can leave half day and go over there and leave high school with certifications and industry recognized certifications before they even graduate high school. But you need to investigate. And I like what you said, even about your cousin, when she was finally offered the opportunity to really open up and say what I wanted to do, she wants cosmetology and is flourishing in it and is having the time of her life and loving that. And so if we meet kids much earlier, if our teachers, and that's one of the things that I do in my professional development, I make sure the teachers know all the different pathways, the counselors know, because everybody is up under that old mindset that you got to go to college first. You got to go to college first. These kids are talented. There are skills out here. Most of them have already gone to YouTube University and know more about what's going on and how to program and do than we do. So, being able to reach them early and direct them. One of the things I've implemented where I'm at is not only just signing the kids up for the ASVAB, but treating their prep for the ASVAB for the military just as important as SAT and ACT prep. While we have all these meetings and all these prep sessions and buying the books and hiring the organization to come in, but we won't do that same thing for a kid that's trying to go to the military so they can get the best score so that they don't just get into the military, but they get the career that they want while they're in the military. So a lot of this is just shifting the mindset about any path that's just not direct straight to college from high school is just as important, whether it's the technical school. I started out in technical school. And then I kept going on. And I tell my kids now, if you want to be a nurse, Okay, if you've got the money and you want to do that and you want to do the 4 years for the RN, go that way. But we're not going to go in loan debt when we can go to the technical school, get an LPN off the state, what you've earned the grant money for that or the scholarships for that, and let the hospital pay for your RN.
And see, we have a lot of nurses in our church. We have nurses in our church. They went to Greenville Technical College, and some went to Spartanburg Community College. And they are RNs doing well. Some of them are X-ray technician. One now is going back to get her bachelor's in nursing with the X-ray technician. Another one is an RN, and she's going back to get her, I can't remember the occupational therapy or physical therapy. She's getting ready to get her bachelor's in whatever. And I know she said something like a bachelor of science. And they are doing very well.
Right.
And like Kim, to the future of the post-secondary success, like I want to be selfish for a minute. I am looking for somebody to do hardwood floors and cannot find anybody that can do them. And I'm like, where are the people?
Right.
So just those things that it's affecting us.
It is. And right now with the baby boomers getting ready to retire and walk out, that's all the experience walking out the door. That's all the knowledge. That's how you maneuver around the shortcut to make it work. All of that, they've gone through it for years and they know how to make this work. But they're also walking out the doors because they're ready to retire. They've done
ready to retire. Yeah. So that's my take on the future of post-secondary success.
And it's a great take on it as well. So we talked about, again, and I think that led into the next one, re-imaging success. How do schools K through 12, how do we shift the approach? And that's again, that's what I was talking about, where everybody's mindset has to shift about what is out there and what's available. But do you have any other input on that? How do the schools, and I'm talking about from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, shift their approach to prepare these students for the new careers that are out there?
Again, it starts with us as leaders. I know that this is going to be aired, but the second in command in our school district has 44 years. And on Tuesday, we were reading a book about AI. He was so fascinated, and we were looking like, AI been around? And we had explained to him that AI is new, because he was like, what do y'all think about this? Is so new. So we had to share with him, AI was with Grammarly. If you've been using Grammarly forever, the squiggly line in the Microsoft Word, we had to explain to him AI was ATM when the ATM machines started coming out. And he was like, what? That was AI? And so just like, okay. And the team was like, so we're going to help you shift your mind that this is not new. Because he kept saying, this is new. And so we was like, no, AI actually came around by 1943 in certain phases. And then we went over there. He was like, how do y'all know this? And we said, because we're in that era when Ask Jeeves was around. This was before Google, Ask Jeeves and Hotmail and all of that. He was like, that's AI. And so we was explaining to him of that. So I say all that to give that background knowledge is we either have to shift with what the changes, or we need to move out the way.
Right.
That's the best way I can say it. And not trying to be age discriminate, but if you're not willing to learn, and if you're not willing to go like, oh, let's try this, you can't use those 7 words that will kill any organization. We never done it like this. That will kill an organization. And so just learning. And when you know your time is up, your time is up. With a lot of things. When my time is up and I feel like, okay, I just can't learn anything else new, then I'm gonna retire and move out the way of the educator and allow the new vibrant and the ones that got that energy, and let them do it. I told my team today, I said, hey, this is my last standards transition. I said, standards are up for adoption every 7 years in South Carolina. That's our law. Only this is the only reason why we're doing it this late is because of COVID. I said, but I'm not doing this again. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And it was like, what? I was like, no, this is it. I said, because I know that I've reached my limit. So just with that.
The final takeaway and resources. So my question is, if there's one key takeaway you want listeners to remember from this conversation, what would it be?
The one key takeaway that I want them to take away is learning to reflect and refine. That we may not have it all right. We are not going to get it right. And it's okay to reflect and refine and pivot. That's what I like to say.
Definitely. And honestly, like we talked about earlier, it may be every single day, multiple times a day.
Yes.
Give yourself the grace.
Yeah. And give yourself grace, and with the evolving of so many things around us. Yeah. So reflect, refine, and pivot.
I think so too. I think one of the things that I've told many people is water. It all, all goes together at the end. It will all come together at the end.
Yes.
It looks like I don't know what's going on with this Wi-Fi, because my phone is fine and everything.
Yeah, it's got you going.
Yeah, so she's gonna do a lot of little splicing on this one, apparently. All right. So there's one last. All right. Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can.
Okay. So the last thing I want you to tell everybody about is Leadership Matters Academy. Talk to us about Leadership Matters Academy.
Okay, so Leadership Matters Academy is where we translate reality, the leaders' visions from reality into fruition, to allow them to understand their leadership skills, strengthen their leadership skills, coaching on leadership skills, understanding what leadership is all about. Understand there are 3 types. You can be a leader, a boss, and a builder, and helping them learn when to use all 3, or which one is the best time and best scenario in the best scenario. Because sometimes we need to build, sometimes we need to be the boss, sometimes we need to lead. But helping the participants to figure out which one they need to be at which time.
Awesome. And is that where, if they go to Leadership Matters Academy, is that where they can reach out to you and connect with you?
Yes. So if you go to my website, there is an area where you can reach out to me. You can submit a request for a consultation, and on there, then we can talk about that. I also do a lot of leadership with implementing math strategies and all that. So I have within the Leadership Matters Academy, I can coach them on math and helping them implement their math implementation plan for their district or for their school. But I also do a lot of coaching with leadership. I have done a lot of leadership conferences on helping people to find their niche in leadership, and what are some things they can do to improve, to make sure they take their organization or take their school to the next level.
Okay. Again, thank you. This was a great conversation. I appreciate you so much, my sister, for coming on here tonight and talking with us. And to my listeners, again, thank you for tuning in. So remember, together we can empower, innovate, and lead one student, one teacher, one leader at a time. And this is Coach D for Coach D Wants to Know, signing off tonight. So again, I want to thank you again, Dr. Perrin, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Coach D Wants to Know. I hope this conversation sparked new ideas and opened up fresh possibilities for the future. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Also, check out the resources available on my website, keystoneinstruction.com. And remember, the journey to success has many paths. Let's make sure every student finds their best fit. Until next time, together we can empower, innovate, and lead one student, one teacher, one leader at a time. See you soon.